Welcome to the show, everybody. Nick,
Hi, everybody.
We started our show with an Alexander Aja film.
Yes, we
That was
did.
our first episode.
That's what the other I put in my notes. Our first film we ever critiqued was Crawl with
Yeah.
the same director and cinematographer.
So it feels nice to return to another realm, be able to revisit this director at the beginning of their filmography as opposed to kind of more the recent fare.
And with this film, they launched a subgenre, which I refer to as the French New Wave of horror.
Yeah. And, yeah, we're definitely going to break it down today because going into it, first time watch for me.
Yeah.
Martyrs is something I did not respond to.
And that means that's good. That's what they want.
So let's see if I responded to High Tension, a.k.a. Switchblade Romance. I don't know why they called it that in other countries. It's not a great title, but it's tense enough. Welcome back to the show. I'm one of your hosts, Kyle Goethe from GoatFilmReviews.com.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the show. Thanks for watching. Thanks for finding us. And for our loyal fans, thank you for continuing to support the show. Hey, the show is on Twitter and on Instagram. Follow that show for our next round of Q&A so you can ask us questions. We'll submit those questions probably through Twitter or on Instagram. And we're also members of the Minnesota Film Critics Alliance. Check out that website for other members' reviews as ours. Today we're going to talk about the film that launched the French New Wave of horror, that catapulted a lot of other like Gaspar Noé films. We critiqued Climax, his movie Irreversible, Martyrs, but this is the launch of it, High Tension.
Yeah. So Marie and Alex are two best friends set to spend the weekend at Alex's family home in order to study for exams. The night they arrive, however, their plans are altered when a homicidal killer arrives at the house out for blood.
Okay, so High Tension. It's very hard to find a copy where it's not English dubbed. I remember seeing a copy of it in 2004. They resubmitted it based primarily of Roger Ebert's criticism of the film. He said it's a great film if you can find it not dubbed. It takes away from its authenticity, its vernacular. It almost cheapens it. And there was one. I don't know if you can find that anymore.
If you have the streaming service Canopy, if your library lets you into that service, you can access the film that way. That was one of the ways I was able to watch it.
Yeah.
It was in the original language. It was subbed, and the subbed version is the unrated version of the film.
Okay.
The dubbed version is the cut down for American audiences version. So for multiple reasons, I would highly suggest you check out the sub, not the dub. And go from there.
For some reason, they don't even dub the swearing, the French swearing, which is why wouldn't you dub that too? But they don't, which is really weird. So search out the original one that's not Englishly dubbed. Read the one that has subtitles, and I think you enjoy this far more better.
Yep.
High Tension is one of my unique criticisms. A lot of people criticize the major plot holes that are in this film. We'll get to that in a minute, but overall, I want your first reaction to this film because Kyle doesn't really respond very well to what is the disturbing, ghastly horror of French New Wave.
Well, it's all about how it's done in a film where it's like if you get to a point where there's just people screaming the whole time, I lose focus on the film because I just don't. I'm not invested at that point. I don't care because it's just people screaming for 90 minutes. Now, this is a movie that up until the last 5 minutes, this was a movie that I was like, yes, this is fantastic. This is everything I wanted it to be. I don't care much for the twist ending. I think it's a twist ending that's been done a couple other times, and that's the thing where it's like it loses that luster. And I don't connect because I don't really care if it's that kind of a twist ending where it's like watch the whole film again and you'll see that we've been setting it up and it's not really as well set up when you really think about some of the things. Plot holes abound at that point.
Yeah.
But I really, really enjoyed 90% of this movie.
I think you're overall with everybody else on board. It's the journey and everything about it.
That's the funny thing about it is when you read the reviews, especially on Rotten Tomatoes, going back to the dubbing versus subbing conversation too, is that the movie has a 41% on Rotten Tomatoes. You can page through all of those reviews and you can see dubbing listed as like one of the #1 criticisms in the bad reviews for the film. And it's interesting to note that so many people are 1 or 5 with this. It's either the worst thing that's ever come out or it's the greatest thing that's ever come out. There's very few people in the direct middle. I'm mostly positive on it. I just find the ending, while not as frustrating as other versions of the same kind of twist, it's a twist that never really excites me.
Yes, and what I understand, I'm going to actually back up a little bit about the plot holes because you're basically following somebody's point of view that is already skewed.
Yes.
So it doesn't really like, well, she does this and X, Y, Z. We understand that's her point of view. and a lot of it doesn't really happen. Almost like Kaiser Sose dictating the events that happen, which is, we know a lot of it, 90% of it is BS.
Yes.
So we get the film viewing of what he thinks, what he's telling. And much like that, we're getting her viewpoint of what she thinks is she's trying to save the day.
Well, what I would argue is with a movie like The Usual Suspects, Kaiser Soze's story, I think part of that was intentional, whereas High Tension, I get the sensation it wasn't intentional, but it's kind of like the Cabin in the Woods defense. Cabin in the Woods retroactively makes every horror film ever made plausible. That's kind of what this film's ending does. It's like, oh, this is what happened, so automatically we can kind of negate any plot holes, any inconsistencies. It kind of saves the inconsistencies of it because that's the twist. And I don't think it was intentional. And thinking about it more and more afterwards was kind of like, oh, yeah, you did do that, didn't you? Like, it kind of did just kind of pull it down a little bit more every single time.
But the 90% of it is fantastic.
Yes, absolutely.
The shot of it, I mean, you really have great cinematography of it. Mm-hmm. I mean, Maxine Alexander.
Yeah.
Because it's Alexander Aja, the Maxine Alexander.
Yeah, worked on Crawl with Aja, and also did the
great.
recent Shazam film, which was another gorgeous-looking movie.
Yeah, I think he's one of the most sought-after cinematographers, and rightfully so, because this is cinematography for a horror movie is wonderful.
Yeah, this kind of visual aesthetic doesn't. I'm not going to say it doesn't usually work for me, I guess, but just overall, it's kind of that cold, grimy-looking film. It's unappealing for the most part, which is part of the intention. I understand, but it's unappealing in this way, in a very watchable way too. I'm never overly dark. It never has that kind of neon or arc sodium light filter on it, where you're just like in a really unappealing world. It's dirty, it's grimy, but it's still incredibly watchable, and you never lose focus on what's happening, which is very important, because when you get these movies that filter so much on the extreme of everything happening, you can lose a little bit of focus, visually speaking, if it's too grimy.
Right,
you know?
yeah, but there's perfect places of camera. They have like a shot of the camera of this, the car's brakes slamming. Mm-hmm. Well, that's a day of shooting. Just to get the camera set up right, so when you slam on the brakes, you have that shot that's only for 5 seconds.
And there's nothing worse than car shooting.
Filming in a car
is one of the worst things you can
you
possibly do.
You and I know filming in a car is technically it's almost magic.
Especially low budget filming in a car when you don't know what's happening in the car when you leave them there.
Because I was like, if they did it like Kubrick did, did you just cut out a car and filmed it? But no, that's actually car chasing.
Yeah, Kubrick had the money to back him up on a lot of those things. But this is the kind of thing where you get a guy just kind of hanging out down in that car for a while. And it's well shot. It's well edited. I think the music is not memorable, but while you're watching, you feel like the tension of the film is maintained by it. Technically speaking, everything about this movie is technically very well done. Especially when you talk about, it's not a first-time feature, but it's a first major feature for Aja. He'd done, I think, 1 or 2 films prior, a couple of short films, that kind of stuff.
If you look at his
this
IMDb,
was the explosion.
right? Yeah,
mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's very well put together.
And I'm really understanding the premise of the story.
Yeah,
I think the story needs to clean up a little bit. Her motivations is she's lesbian suppressed. Doesn't really.
if that's what the motivation is hinted at, then it's frustrating. I've read a couple of those reviews. I didn't really. That wasn't something that spoke to me watching the film. Was that was the reason why she's doing what she's doing? But I can understand the criticism. I just don't entirely buy that was the focus of where they were going with it. You know.
But we talked about in Writer's Workshop. A lot of people critique motivation. Motivation, I don't care. But if you're going to express that motivation that she's obsessed with this girl that not really doesn't want feedback, she just wants to express it.
Yeah.
And she's ashamed to express it that she's going to go on a killing spree.
Yeah. And that kind of
spoilers. Watch the movie.
Watch the movie first. Yeah. But what bothered me so much was that this is a case where it's okay to go simpler. And that's where that ending
I think you need to do a little more simpler than
Philippe Nehan, who plays our killer throughout the film, never really kind of shied away from his face, but we shy away just enough. That hat dips down just enough where you can't always see his eye. You can't always see his mouth.
I love that.
Doing that. I think it's just obscured enough to make him a force of nature, very Michael Myers' character. Yeah. I saw a lot of parallels to that because we don't know who the guy is.
This vehicle he rides in, you don't really know what that is, kind of.
Yeah, I got Jeepers Creepers vibes from that weird looking van. Like, it's just a very kind of, it's a horror icon in the making that was ultimately undone by an ending.
Right. I would like to see some kind of explanation that maybe it's her relative, maybe it's something.
Or just a force of nature. I would have been fine with a force of nature, someone
Force of
showing up.
nature that just follows her, whatever. Yes.
Because I think we spend enough time getting to know our characters at the beginning that a force of nature showing up doesn't take away from the film, because again, we're still focused on character then. Like, we've met our characters, so whatever's happening to them, it could be a walking shark, running up and just attacking them with batons. But as long as we're invested in the characters, whatever they're going through would have worked just as fine. So I don't need to know why the killer is the way the killer is. And again, that's why that ending comes to it.
You don't really need to concentrate on motivation, and I think they just try to find their motivations, which you just can erode that.
Yeah.
I don't really need to know Michael Myers' motivations, even though that's been heavily investigated.
Well, in fact, they've retconned it enough, because every time they try to give him motivations, then people don't like it, so they scale it back and go, oh, he has none. But then we start giving him more motivations again.
So overall, the aesthetic is wonderful. It's a lot of reflections of a lot of horror movies we've seen before, and like Kyle said, like Halloween. Psychological thrilling, the psychological component and thrilling is another avenue of why this genre flourished. It's because the psychology of it is disturbing, as well as it's uneasy to watch.
Yeah.
That ending with the cement cutter is still, I'm done. I can't watch it anymore.
Oh man, it didn't. I mean,
not to mention you attacking somebody with a cement cutter saw.
Yeah,
which is a great choice. Nobody's ever thought about that, and she's able to maneuver with it. It's a heavy object.
You know, rewatching In Search of Darkness recently, I came up on this whole argument about Motel Hell with like the chainsaw fight. And
with the pig on his head,
the
pig head.
And I kept thinking, Joe Bob Briggs in that documentary said, like, using a chainsaw is like the worst weapon to use because it just locks up all the time. I don't know cement cutters very well, but like I wonder if that would have had the same issues. But it's, again, such a unique weapon. You don't think about the plausibility of it because it just stands out as this iconic image. Even so much that it's kind of spoiling the ending of the movie to put it on the poster in that way. Like,
yeah, we're getting there.
Yeah,
that's the other thing, and that's the element of the French New Wave of horror is the element that we are going to get there. That you like in the Martyrs, the embracement, but they're all covered and caked in blood.
Yeah.
So the component is
the poster is almost the ending of all these movies.
Right. So a lot of this kind of the tropes for this genre is the psychology of it. It's very disturbing, unpleasantly disturbing. It's very gory, very splash heavy with your blood and everything, but the aesthetics and shot and camera work are top notch.
Yes. In fact, going back to even something we talked about in a previous episode, we both really appreciated, whether or not you like the movie Zombie 2, we both really appreciated the makeup effects that were in that movie.
Right.
This actually has the same makeup artist, Giannetto De Rossi, worked on this film.
What?
Yeah.
You found that out?
I found that out. So De Rossi was known for working with Fulci and has become popular as well for working with Aja as well. So we have that kind of transcendence of, we really appreciate the gore effects are really well done in this movie as they were in Zombie. We just got added years, I guess.
I do like the aesthetic, that the whole point that she has to go to this conservatory, this greenhouse garden, where it's another showdown.
Yeah.
I do like the aesthetic for a reason. It's almost like a metaphor of going into fertility and all that stuff, womanhood and all that stuff. And you can research, it's almost like her being the final girl kind of a thing. And you have to go through this crucible. It's always around vegetation. Like you go through the woods all the time.
Yeah.
So it's almost like, yeah, we have to do that.
What's really cool too is that normally speaking, you introduce a really unique home. It's a pretty unique home at the beginning of the film. We get our characters in there, the lights get down low, everyone goes to sleep. Someone shows up to try and kill everyone. It's a classic idea.
Yeah.
What's really great for me was that I assumed that as a 90-minute movie, this is where our action was going to be. So the moment that car takes off and they're both in the back, I have no idea where the movie's going at that point. And that was another really great, I guess, twisted story point, because they were going to set the entire film in the home. And had it done that, sure, would have been fine. But switching up the location, heading out to this gas station, ratchets up that tension.
It makes
very well.
It makes it something that we haven't seen in a lot of horror movies, which is kind of like Jason, kind of like Freddy, and Michael Myers. Is you set up location, you stay there.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting component to this movie, that we're going down the road. It's a road trip kind of a horror movie, which I think they should explore it a little bit better.
Yeah, because when we get to our killer's homestead, if you will, I expected us to spend time figuring out who he was. I didn't need it, but we were at his home at that point. It felt like the exposition was going to come flying. as we start to break down the barriers and get ready for this final altercation that was going to be our twist ending, that was going to ratchet everything into peace, I feel like, again, we're heading into these imagery, the greenery, the growth, and that kind of stuff. And it goes back to being undone by that ending. If our character had a catharsis piece, or if our character discovered what she was doing and who she was and was able to make a choice at that point, maybe. Maybe that could have been saved in some way. We're like, you can't look back, but we can at least fix what the moment is. But our character never learns once because she never realizes what she's doing. And that's kind of like frustrating, too, because we've spent our time watching her grow as a character.
As her. So yeah. Difference.
Exactly, yeah. Our character Marie is supposed to be the one that we are watching grow. And in fact, so much of French New Extremity is watching people who are normal get scaled back to their most primal, in some ways. Yeah. And that's what she's doing as she grows, is she's forced to become a monster to face off against this person. And then as we learn, spoiler alert, she already is. And it's like, that ruins the growth. It's just it's just frustrating more than anything.
I would actually, for horror movie, like writer's workshop, I would use this movie because there's so many different things you would critique about this that are really well done, but also like, what would you do, kind of a thing. I would use this as a kind of a parameter, kind of like a setup, like a palette.
Yeah.
Here's a script. What would you do next, and do that, and then start from there and work on your own kind of a style.
I think there's a couple of directors who have gone on to great fame that you could do that with early scripts from them, because it's not an inherent, like, this is not a terrible screenplay, but there are things in it that
away from its rating
themselves. Yeah. And I was reading somewhere that famous French director Luc Besson, who had done some script, like, not rewrites, but kind of like given some feedback on it, had actually told them to adjust our twist ending from the last, like, 30 seconds of the movie to actually giving a sequence. And again, like, that's an improvement. It doesn't save the ending, but I think giving us more time, it does soften it, where you're able to kind of adjust to the change, and it's not just we got you, but it's actually part of the story, even though I don't think it's a good part of the story. Yeah. So there's a lot of, like, writer's workshop-y elements that could be taken and kind of worked on here. There's a lot of shock moments that I don't think add much to the film. The guy with the head at the beginning.
On the stairwell?
No, the guy with the head at the beginning inside of his van, and he's just getting some pleasure from this decapitated person. It's like a thing where it's like, I don't think it adds anything to the movie, and it kind of makes me wonder, what is this that we're seeing? Because
it's her point of view.
She's at the house. I don't know. Yeah. It's a thing where it's kind of like it undoes itself a little bit,
And so I would like to maybe clean up a little bit, but you're putting yourself in a corner. You're writing yourself in a corner that you can't get out of.
Yeah.
And because you needed this element of the whole journey, and you don't want to do a final girl that's been done over time, and you have this great camera work and technique that you want to do something else to give a little bit extra punch to it.
Yep.
How do we get here from French New Wave of Horror? Well, check out what in East Asia was doing from 1999 to early 2000s, and they were dabbling into the shock value, the gaudy, the disturbing. Tashiaki Maki.
I would say that was building since the early 90s, like, just slowly, and then it exploded in the late 90s,
99, like with the Audition, with Itchy the Killer and stuff like that, which was really disturbing. Not really scary horror, but just disturbing horror, which is hard to digest. And this movie is hard to digest. It's another one that I'm done watching.
This one is not in the same way for me as Martyrs. I would watch this one again, and again, had they not had that ending, it would have been on my, like, yearly horror film rewatch level. I kid you not. I think everything up until that moment, I was like, yes, this is a classic in my book, and this is something I'm going to own and watch a bunch of times. And I am one of those guys. I've enjoyed a lot of Alexander Aja's work. I like Mirrors. I love his Piranha remake. I think it's one of the best remakes ever made. I think The Hills Have Eyes has grown on me.
Yeah, he did a bunch. He went on to remake kind of thing.
He's done just a ton of work in his time. We both enjoyed Crawl quite a bit.
Crawl was great.
So it's just something where, gosh, you almost had it. And I'm happy that this is your early work and not your current work, because it shows that growth that he's capable of doing. Yeah. Fun fact, I think it's interesting, we've got Maywen, I'm going to butcher the name, playing Alex, who is kind of our scream.
It's really weird. She's playing Alex, and then the director's name is Alexander.
Yeah.
It's a lot of Alex in this movie.
But she's the ex-wife of Luc Besson, and I did not know that she plays our blue alien singer from The Fifth Element. So she's belting out music in that film. Right? Yeah, and now she's belting out screams in this. She got to have a lot of lung power for those two roles, and I really, really give credit for that. Also, side note, I want to throw out to director Frank Calhoun, who did P2, appears in this film as the gas station attendant.
Very clever. Good catch. Good catch. So I talked about P2 was another one of the cinematographer did.
And I think these two, Alex and Gregory Levasseur, did the screenplay for P2 as well. So it's kind of like tied into that realm of where we are with.
That's another one of those scripts that
you almost had it. It's almost had it. And that's kind of that early stuff. So I appreciate it. And I think this is a very well done movie for 90% that just kind of irks me at the end. I would be curious. I've never read the book. Have you ever read Dean Koontz's Insanity or Intensity?
Intensity, no.
Yeah. So there was a bit of controversy that came out about this film because this film is very closely tied story-wise to a Dean Koontz book called Intensity. I've not read the book, so I can't speak to it. But it does. I've read the synopsis a little bit. It does sound very similar to friends attacked in a home, and not sure if you're one of them. And Dean Koontz, Ashad said he'd read the book. And he became aware of the connections to it, but never full out said that it was based on it or intentionally done. And then Koontz didn't want to do anything legally speaking because he said that movie is so gross and disgusting, I don't want to have anything to do with it. So he let it kind of go. But I'd be curious to read the Dean Koontz book. I think I own it in my stack upstairs and haven't gotten around to it because I'm curious. If you've read the book and seen the movie, tell us, is it as close as a lot of people have claimed? I'm curious about that. So,
but that's been played many times over. You're pursuing a killer, and then you realize you actually are. There's a movie out with.
This is just a case where that's very, very close, from what I hear.
It's a movie out with one of the actors from Cabin in the Woods. Am I the killer?
Oh, Am I the Killer? Yeah.
Yeah, which is he goes to the video store and then he calls his girlfriend. And she goes, "Are you this, this, and this?" Then you might be the killer. I think the title of the movie is. There's
a lot of movies where people are suspected killers but turn out not to be, and then there's a lot of movies where people are expected to be the good person and turn out to be the killer, and it's just a weird thing where. It might have been overdone, and maybe
everything always
the time.
Everything that's always a reflection of something else, and this movie is a lot of reflections that we've seen of Force of Nature, serial killer, The Final Girl. And I think they want to do a different twist on it. I appreciate the risk, but it just fell through at the end. But overall, technically sound, wonderful production from a movie that's independent.
Oh yeah,
and I mean, there's great cinematography. It's edited really well. I think her performance is a physical, demanding.
Oh yeah.
Role where a lot of running and everything and getting dirty and then carrying the chainsaw. So 9 out of 10 of things about it was great. You just have to clean up the script.
Yeah, I mean, 90% terrific, 10% terrible, with a twist that is disappointing, and also, I didn't read into the repressed sexuality of the main character, but a lot of people I know have said that as well.
The whole point of her in her home bedroom with herself, and then that's catapults everything. Yeah,
it wasn't something I read into it, but a lot of people I know have told me that after the fact now, and I'm like, I see what you're saying. It didn't hit me in that way, but if it hit you in that way, then it makes the twist all the more frustrating because you didn't need it. So 90% terrific movie. I still would highly recommend it if you're looking for something in that realm. This is a good palate starter to the French New Extremity, because I think if you like this movie, you'll at least know if it's worth checking
Then you'll
out
get comfortable getting into Gaspar Noir's films.
Yeah.
Like Climax and Irreversible, which
are
very hard.
I don't think comfortable has ever been used in that sentence.
No,
with that
and,
name,
and he's one of those, like, I was disturbed by a movie. He's like, good. That's the whole point.
Yeah.
All right. Have you seen High Tension?
Yeah.
I would say you would not forget that you've seen this movie.
No, definitely not. It sat on the shelf at the video rental stores.
How harsh we criticize it, I still regard it as good because I still retain. I've seen this movie, and there's things I retain from it that is still, like, for her, squirting the blood on the.
Yeah.
I would love to be the guy that. All right, action. I would love to be squirting the blood gun.
Yeah. Well, I even read too that there was blood that got on one of the cameras so much that it soaked into the camera, and when that camera was being used on another film, it started to run out. When the camera started getting
and then he spooked everybody on set. Yeah.
So I'm going to praise the film. I think it's fantastic, and I think what I want to say is that the ending does not negate the journey. It affects rewatchability for me.
It does.
But overall, I think this movie is definitely worth checking out at least once. The ending does not ruin the rest of the movie. It's just not a good ending. So please check it out if you're into this kind of thing. And if you're not, that's totally cool. You don't have to watch these extreme movies if it's not for you. But please let us know down below what you thought of it when you saw it. What did you think of the ending? Does it work for you? Does it not? Please let us know your thoughts down below. And while you're down there, please like and subscribe.
Yes.
How much does it cost to do that? Nothing. do it right now. But if you want to spend a little bit of money to help out the show, please check out our Patreon link down below. Join new patrons like Tyler Prawl, who just joined our Patreon link. Thank you, Tyler. Thanks for joining the show that way. And yeah, you can find all my film reviews over at goatfilmreviews.com.
You can find my podcast in St. Paul Filmcast. I can't talk today. Anywhere you find podcasts.
Well, until next time, we're going to be relaxed over here and not be murdering people with cement cutters.
Well, we don't share cigarettes, so we're good.